Hi, my name is Lynn Chapman, and this is my portfolio. For Competency 1, assess knowledge and skills of students in relation to long-term content goals and district standards and determining the knowledge and skills each student needs to accomplish them. I chose two projects that I do at the very beginning of the year to assess where the students are. The first is called This I Believe, and what it is a writing assignment where I ask students to write 500 words exactly about their core beliefs. What this allows me to see is, can students write, can they organize their thoughts, and are they able to express themselves with a good voice. So this is a narrative piece, and it gives me a great gauge for their writing skills. For their reading skills, I use something called the compare and contrast paragraph. After students have read a short story and a poem from this book called Snapshots, they write a compare and contrast paragraph between the two main characters from each. So finding their similarities and differences, and then I use a rubric to score their paragraphs. For Competency 2, design instructional plans that incorporate knowledge of students' developmental levels, interests, abilities, and learning accomplishments consistent with content goals and district standards. I chose the unit called Monotheism Madness Menu. And what I've done is, for this unit, I have taught Judaism and Christianity to my 7th grade social studies class, and I offer them a menu of options for a final project for each religion. And so this allows the students to choose what they would like to do to show me what they know, and it definitely creates an opportunity for all sorts of learners. Some examples of those projects: one was a Torah that a student made, and she had the 10 Commandments written inside. Another example is a collage of Judaism symbols and pictures, and on the back she explained each one. And another option was to make a cartoon or a comic, and this is the story of David and Goliath. My second evidence is the Literature Circle unit, and for this unit I offer the students about 6 books to choose from to read, and they understand that the book has a certain length, a reading level, a genre, a subject matter, and they are allowed to choose the book that they would like to read. Once they've chosen, there are about 5 or 6 groups of 5 students, and they get a calendar like this, a schedule, and they map out how many pages they're going to read by a certain date that I give them. Every other class, they meet as a group to discuss those chapters. And so what they do is they have a job. Each person has a different job. So there's literary luminary or travel tracer, vocabulary enricher, and so on. So this is called the Literature Circle unit. The last evidence I'm showing is a unit I wrote called The 3 Types of Irony. And what I've done here is allowed for students to have opportunities to learn in different ways. So on some opportunities they listen to a song about irony, another one they read cartoons about irony, another one they read a story about irony, another day I would read them a story about irony. So this really allows for multiple intelligences in this particular unit. For Competency 3, establish a classroom climate conducive to learning, positive classroom management, a safe and developmentally appropriate environment, efficient organization of time and materials, and effective transitions. For this particular competency, I chose the Future Success Form, which is a form that another teacher and I created for the middle school. And what it is just a list of behaviors that we're trying to have students change. And so if we're seeing a behavior in class that is not positive, we give the students a warning, and after that then they get this form, and they just check off the appropriate box for whatever type of behavior it is, write a little bit about what happened and what are some possible solutions, and then they sign it, and then it goes home and the parents sign it. So this offers a nice tracking device for parents to be in the loop as to what's going on at school. Our district uses learning targets not only for academics but also for behavior, And so we need to report those out on the report card. And so this form I created so that the students could rate themselves at the end of each class, and I give them just a few minutes at the end of the period, and they just write the date here, and then they give themselves a score on these learning targets. And for example, one learning target would be, I arrived to class prepared and on time. So they either give themselves a nailed it, I can do better, or yikes, which would be a 1. So 3, 2, 1. Because I have such large class sizes, around 45, when I do a warm up in the morning for reading, for writing, they would need to share what they wrote in their journal. Instead of just calling on students whose hands are up, I usually just call out their name on a card. So I, at the beginning of the year, have each student fill out a card or just write their name on a plain card, and I use these cards so that I make sure to cycle through the whole deck so I get every student. For competency 4, implement instructional plans that employ knowledge of subject matter and use research-based educational practices that reflect how students learn, are sensitive to individual differences and diverse cultures, and encourage parent participation. Okay, for this particular competency, I chose the multicultural holiday paper, and what I do is around the holidays, I would assign this particular assignment where each student has a choice of what culture's holiday they would like to research. And so some research, of course, Christmas, some would research Hanukkah, some would research Kwanzaa, and they don't all have to be December holidays. But the students will write an essay about that holiday, and then we have a poster that goes with it, and we get into a big circle, and everyone shares their poster. Okay. This is also a competency that fits with my action research plan, which was the use of graphic organizers and their effects on creativity in writing in the middle grades. I wanted to find out if students were hindered by the use of graphic organizers. Sometimes students just want to write and they don't want to bother with actually planning out their writing. But what I found from my results was that if the paper isn't organized, their scores on ideas and their scores on voice and those sorts of things, it's not going to make a bit of difference. So the graphic organizer actually does really help. Competency 5. Collaborate with parents, colleagues, and members of the community to provide internal and external assistance to students and to their families, if needed to promote student learning. Our district competes in something called Oregon Battle of the Books, and I am the coach this year. And what this is it's a reading competition, and there are 16 books, and schools from all over our state of Oregon will read these 16 books, and then they battle against each other. They battle by answering questions about each of the books, and they're on teams of 4. So this is a wonderful opportunity to help students outside of school excel. I also have parent involvement. Parent volunteers help with this, and this is a great program. I also have parent help parent involvement when I do the persuasive writing essay assignment. So I have parents work in the hallway and in the library with my students and help them do research to write their persuasive essay, and oftentimes help with editing and revising. Competency 6. Evaluate student progress in learning, refine plans for instruction, and establish alternative goals or environments for learning when necessary. I use something called an exit slip in my classes, and for instance, this is called the Wildwood exit slip. We were reading a novel called Wildwood, and I wanted to make sure students were engaged in what they read that day, and so in order to leave the room, they had to fill out this ticket, and it says, what is one thing that happened in chapter 3 that has happened to you too, and what do you think will happen next? So just a simple little ticket, but what it shows me very quickly is which students are caught up on the reading, which students are engaged in what they're reading. Okay. I post the learning targets in my classroom. These are actually in poster form up in my classroom, but the students are it's very clear, the learning targets for the class, and those are, again, posted so that I can see them and the students can see them, and we refer to them, and I point to them and say, this is what we're working on today. So these are always visible, and students are very aware of what learning targets they need to meet for that day. Competency 7, document and report the progress of students in achieving content goals and district standards. I give one of these sheets to the students to paste into their journals, and what it is a list of all of the learning targets for my class. And on this side, they would fill in the assessments that they've had in my class, and then of course what scores they received for each learning target. This stays in their journal, and then they pull it out each time we have an assessment, so it really allows them to track their own learning. And then I also, of course, have it in my grade book as well. Our district just adopted a new grading program called Synergy, and Synergy allows teachers to track students' learning target growth. And so this is an example of a report that I can generate for students, which basically lists out the learning target, and then underneath would list out the assignment that went with that learning target, and then that gives them a score. So this is valuable information. Rather than just giving them a point system on each assignment, it actually breaks down each learning target and then the assignments that go into that learning target. So parents get a very clear idea of if their student is progressing in certain learning targets or not. Competency 8A, use emerging research on teaching, learning, and school improvement to enhance practice. I love to offer students choices. I think that that's the best way to get a buy-in for kids. And on a research project that we just did on Judaism and Christianity, I offered students whatever choice they wanted to outline their notes. So I offered this traditional outline format, a four-square writing outlet format, or this more of a flowchart type outline. So it just allows students to have the ability to choose. Not all students like to outline the same way, and so I like to give them options. I have two sons myself who are in middle school, and I have lots of middle school boys, and I was very curious about how boys learn. And so I wrote a PowerPoint on the boys we teach, and I shared this with my middle school team. And so I just found some interesting statistics about boys and the history of girls in education and how their boys and girls are different, and is there really a gender gap, and so forth. How boys learn. Competency 8B, participate in designing, evaluating, and improving opportunities for teaching and learning in an educational institution. This year we had a brand new teacher come to our building who had only taught first grade, and she was put in an 8th grade classroom, and she taught also 7th grade, which I'm teaching. So I mapped out a year's plan for her so that she could see what we're going to be teaching in each of the writing and reading for the year, and then speaking, so that she had a good plan for the future. I also mentored her, and I met with her regularly to plan units, and I think that really helped to have this year-long plan to go from. Something I also shared with my colleagues is a literacy instruction in the adolescent classroom PowerPoint that I made. And in this, it really pushes the idea that students need to be motivated, and they also need to be having literacy taught to them in all classes and not just their language art classes, and that it's definitely important to make sure that students have the opportunities to read as much as possible in all classes. Competency 8C, collaborate with one's colleagues to enhance job performance, and advance teaching as a profession. I'm a member of a PLC, which is a professional learning community in my school, and we meet every other Monday and talk about strategies that work in our classroom. And sometimes we'll bring ideas to the PLC, and then we all go back to our classroom and try the new idea, and then report back the following meeting and see how it went. The playing card activity that I showed earlier was an example of a strategy that was shared in the PLC meetings. The second piece of evidence for Competency 8C is a student academic behavior inventory that we have run for our students in the middle school and in the high school. And what we've done is we've listed out all of the behaviors that we are seeing that are academic, that we are either finding to be positive or negative, and how we might want to change those. And then we went through and read this article called Drive by Daniel Pink, and learned about the motivation behind students and the things that they do. There are type I's and type X's. Type I's are intrinsically motivated and type X's are externally motivated. And then we decided, are our students doing these particular behaviors because of intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? And so that was a very helpful activity that we did as a staff, and that we believe will help us motivate our students to do the right thing. Thank you very much.